Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Sash as we count down to the beginning of the season. I'm very excited. I'm sure you're all very excited as well. And joining me on the satellite is Jesse. Hello, mate.
G'day. Thanks for having me. Welcome back. New year, new beginnings, ready to have my hopes and dreams quashed and destroyed again.
I'll let the listeners in on some behind the scenes. Our messages during the very start of that practice match were pretty bleak. I'm sure a lot of Essendon fans were like, "Oh God, gee, we've got a long way back." But it's going to be a good year. What's your overriding emotion before we get into the game, Jesse? How are you feeling about the game? Also about the season, sorry.
Probably the most sort of reserved and conservative that I've felt for a while now. I feel whether or not you like Kane Corns, he's probably right to an extent that we are overly hyped at the beginning of every year for some reason.
Yeah.
History would say, though, this is the year that we make finals because every second year we seem to have a new coach and they typically bring us to the finals. But I do actually think since like 2007 or something, we've made the finals every second year. So who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is another one of those years that we bounce back. Before we jump into the practice match, I guess the news of the week to touch on is the captaincy change. So we saw that Dyson Heppell stood down late last week, and then we saw the appointment of Zach Merrett, and then of course Andrew McGrath as well coming in to be the skipper. I'll start with Heps with you, Jess. How did you feel seeing him making an announcement? What was your opinion of the decision?
Just a smart decision and a necessary one. We've all been pretty strong about the team lacking on-field leadership for a while now, and poor Heps with his body, he couldn't live up to, exactly where we would want him to be as an on-field leader, and probably no better time given sort of the sweeping change that's come through the club to nominate a new captain. And look, obviously been a loyal servant for us for a really long time, and probably the best way for him to go out. I was really happy that he was the one that actually put his hand up to say, I think it's my time, rather than the club make that decision. And it didn't seem like the club was going to make that decision anyway. It seemed as if it was a bit of a surprise to many people at the club, but it's just a testament to the type of person that he is. And I believe second most games as a captain of the Essendon Football Club. So that's a pretty big achievement.
I don't think I don't think he might be second in the modern era, but I mean, because I think he did 107, but there were definitely people who did longer than him. So I'm not sure if it was second, but I don't know. Maybe it was second for losses because he has captained us through a pretty tough period.
Looking for losses.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't think it was second. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like he is a people person, Heps, and that is one of the reasons why he's popular amongst the playing group. And I think he was the right person for the period that he served under. But I think a lot of us were discussing last season that, his body wasn't the same as it once was, and he was lacking at times during games. And you're sort of sitting there going, gee, like, you can't drop your captain. Like, he had a bad run of form, and you don't want to be in that situation. Like, Jaron Geary at St Kilda's one that comes to mind of a player who was kind of put in that position where he was clearly not in the best 22 at points. And that's what's good with Heps now, is that he doesn't have to be there every single week. If he has a bad run of form or he has an injury, he can go to the VFL and still offer something. So, look, I'm pretty happy with it. I think a lot of people are pretty happy with it. It was the last of many things that have changed over the off-season. New CEO, new president, new coach, now a new captain as well. So it was the last one to fall, in a sense. Let's swing over to Zachy and Pidge. I don't think it could have been anyone else, really. Like, people were throwing out some left field. I know we were joking in our messenger group about, a Paco Draper combination, and the hilarity that would bring. But I mean, was it ever going to be anyone else?
Oh, not really. I mean, there was some talk about Redmond and some hype around Redmond, and I know there was some people talking around saying they thought Redmond could have maybe have been the other co-captain. But they're obviously grooming Andy, and they have ever since they drafted him. It was one of the main reasons they drafted him as a player to eventually become a leader of the club. And, according to Zach, they seem to complement each other really well. I think Andy's sort of better at putting his message across to the group, and then Zach's more of an on-field leader. So, look, I don't have any issue with it. I probably think that if there's any club that was going to introduce a co-captaincy, it's probably necessary that we did. I just don't really – I'm not sure as to whether or not we had an out-and-out leader to fulfill that role independently. So, I guess to answer your question, probably not a surprise, but nonetheless, I think, smart appointment having both of them in those positions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was a logical decision of captain and vice. And like you said, there's ways that McGrath can complement Merrett, and there's ways that Merrett can complement McGrath, and they can sort of do it together. I'm glad it is just a 1-2 captain, vice captain though. Like, I hate looking at clubs like Sydney who have like 3 co-captains. Like I don't get that stuff. Like, just pick. You need to pick someone. Like, I find that really strange when some teams do that. But look, I like the decision. I'm happy with it. And makes it more exciting for the future. Let's jump into the practice match that we've just been watching. It was meant to be 6 periods. The AFL website said it was going to be 6 quarters initially, and I was like, 6 quarters isn't a real thing. But we decided 5 was enough. We don't need to play 6. That's how good Essendon is. We don't need to play 6. We'll do you in 5. That's just what we do. Slow start. Obviously, the squad was changing throughout the match, but, there were some pretty good passages there. And I feel like we've all walked away with a nice warmth going, all right, there's something to build on there.
Pretty intelligent being up by 4 points and just saying, we'll just jump on the plane, boys. Take the win. Sorry, Gold Coast. Take the first dub of the season. If only we could just do that in the regular season at quarter time.
That'd be handy. There's a lot of games from the last few years that I reckon we would have loved to have shut up shop at quarter time.
Yeah. No, but you're right. I was really concerned in the first sort of period and a bit. I was thinking, oh, geez, just nothing has changed since last year. Just kicking long, just not moving the ball fast, stagnant. We had the wind in our favour, and Gold Coast were moving the ball, from coast to coast with the wind against them. And I was just thinking, oh, this is going to be such a dreadful year again. And we've got, all of those thoughts just came into my head. I was hopelessly in a nightmare again, just thinking, we're doomed. This club's cursed, but we pulled it together, and I was super impressed with the way that we covered the ground. I think really when it comes to preseason games, there's only so much that you can really look into, from like a strategy point of view, because of how scrappy these games are, and particularly with that wind, it was really quite a terrible game to watch for the most part. Pretty scrappy, but it seemed like, I guess, up against this team that supposedly had the most grueling preseason out of all the AFL teams, I actually think traveling interstate, we ran out the game better than them. We had more pressure, and really only after sort of that, I think their second period with the wind, after that period when they had the wind, I think we kept them to like 5 or 6 points in that sort of 5th period or 4th period. So to do that when they had the wind just showed. And then in that last quarter, we just really seemed to be running over the top of them, which was really good to see.
Yeah, and there was, quite a few missed chances at the end there where we had guys running into goal, snaps, quite some that were very gettable, some not as much, but, you'd hope that in a real game they get them. And, if a couple of those went in, we're talking about a, 15, maybe 20 point win, quite comfortably. So yeah, definitely a positive to come out of the game. You're right; it was incredibly scrappy. I know this is another one of my, Rob rant at the media type things, but what is up with the camera work there? They've really got the work experience kids up there this time of year, because in that first half, I thought one of the tripods must have fallen over at one point. Like, I was like, they're like, oh, someone kicked a goal. And I'm like, I wouldn't know. You're not showing it. Like, how am I supposed to analyze what's going on? I can't even see the ball.
There was a bit of that, yeah. You being in the media and in production, I'm sure your head was spinning. Mine was as well, in all fairness. And I don't know if were you watching it on KO?
I had Foxtel Go, so it's the same shit,
Was it like skipping? And
yeah. I thought it was me. I was like, because sometimes my internet here at my house just drops out randomly. I'm like, oh, it's the bloody NBN again.
Yeah.
But then I was like, is it actually that? And then I thought about posting on Twitter or something, being like, oh, is anyone else having difficulties? But then I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that guy who's posting about it, I went through this whole cycle in my head of being like, should I do it? Should I not? And then I just decided not to. But it's good to know I'm not the only one. And listeners, if you've been wondering that as well, you're not the only one. We also suffered through that ordeal. So,
well, I just don't understand why they chose in those conditions also to not play on the main oval. I mean, it's not like it's a far distance. It's quite literally a stone's throw away. And it was really nice just seeing, the peak hour traffic for the first half of that game.
Just rolling in.
Oval. What a shocking training ground. I feel awful for them. It's just a terrible, terrible place to look like rain every day.
There's a few clubs in the AFL who have some pretty stinking training grounds, and that's definitely up there. Like, it's not quite a public oval, which our dear friends at Melbourne have to train on, but it's up there. Like, it's pretty bad. But I don't know. I guess there's some sort of thing that they play on. They have to play on that ground because then they don't have to do certain things, I'd imagine. Like, if you go into Metricon, I assume there's a certain amount of stuff that has to happen.
Yeah. Security.
Like, you probably need to do food and whatever else, and there's a certain quota of shit they might have to do, whereas if they put it on there, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, good to see the red and black faithful out there as well. Always good to see our Queensland supporter base. Let's look at some of the players throughout the game, and I guess we can talk about the ones to me that stood out in terms of either being notably good or I just thought they were doing something interesting. Here's the one I want to start with, and I was not expecting this at all, was the Kane train himself, Mert's favourite, Kane Baldwin, starting at full back on Big Marbio Chol. We did hear before the game that Brandzerk Thatcher was a laid out, so I do wonder if that had anything to do with it or this was something they pre-planned. But I didn't think he was that bad, to be honest. Chol kicked a goal, but I think Laverde was on him in that moment, and I sort of went away from it going, maybe Kane can play as a backman. What do you think?
I was really impressed, and I'm really happy for him because we know the road that he's had to go down as a player in his juniors, and it did seem as if at this point in time, just from all the reports on Blitz and so on, that he really was sort of the last forward after Voss stepping up, which looked like it was almost curtains for him and possibly his career. But being Essendon, we love giving our forwards lifelines in the back line or vice versa. And there was a bit of, look, I'm going to be probably crucified for saying this, but there were echoes of Michael Hurley about the way that he presented.
Woof. I mean,
let me explain why, okay, before.
Okay, go for it.
Before you jump down my throat. I thought one of the things that really impressed me was that he was really strong underneath the football and was very difficult to move out of the way. He almost had that sort of freight train about him that you'd see in Hurley, but also quite a smart user of the football, like lowers the eyes, has a really nice piercing kick, and also got his fists to almost every contest, was tackling really hard. And that's sort of all the shades of what we used to get out of Hurls. So I was thinking, if we, as a backup, he's more than serviceable. And it's not like Chol is, any sort of muppet forward. He's was a really, I think he kicked more than 40 goals last year. So
he had a good year, yeah.
I don't think he actually kicked a goal on Kane. As I think you're right. Laverde was on him at the time in that first quarter, and then there was a free kick that Caldwell gave away where he kicked one from directly in front. So
Yeah.
it was a good game. I was really
Yeah,
happy.
and you make some good points because you think about him when he was playing forward in those brief games he got at the start of last season, and it was pretty hard because we were garbage and he wasn't getting service, yada yada yada. But he isn't like if he was playing footy 10, 15 years ago, he could be one of the best footballs in the game. But nowadays, those modern forward guys, they're that extra 5, 10 centimeters taller in your 200s. They've got that huge leap, which is what Chol does. So Chol would always have him if he got out in the lead and could actually run and jump on. But as you said, he's just this absolute mountain of a kid who can just get in the way. And half of being a defender is being able to outposition someone. And that's what he did. And like when you first said Michael Hurley, I was like, nah, no way, man. But now I'm sort of like, I can see what you mean. And who knows if Zerk Thatcher's little niggle means that he's not able to play round one. I mean, who knows? We'll find out over the coming weeks.
I think that they should drop Kelly and play Baldwin in Kelly's role.
Wow,
that's my opinion. Kelly was absolutely awful in my opinion today.
Do we? I mean, like, I know Kelly's not lightning fast, but do we run the risk of being a bit slow if we've got Zerk Thatcher, Baldwin, Laverde, even Ridley, who I wouldn't say is known for his speed? Like, do we run the risk of being, a bit one dimensional in terms of that?
Look, I understand where you're coming from, but I firstly don't think that Kelly is lightning fast. I don't think he's much faster than those guys, and I think just Baldwin's ability to handball and just dispose of the ball more effectively than Kelly, I truly think is worth a lot more than having someone who's slightly quicker. I think more often than not, if the ball's coming in fast like that, you're probably relying on your midfielders to do a better job to put pressure up on the ball faster. Yep. Whereas today, there are a number of times where we were attacking off halfback where the ball came to Baldwin and he just made really smart decisions with the footy in hand. And that's not something that we can say most of our defenders in the team have as a skill. And to have one other bloke that can dispose of the ball or, jump on the ball, contest, get a hand pass out. I mean, it's obviously glimmers of what I've seen, and I won't get too hyped around him as much as I'm giving him massive props right now. But I don't know. I really just didn't like Kelly's game today, and he's just sort of a 50-50 player, and maybe it is just worth investing in a young player over him.
No, I totally get that. I think Kelly's weakness is his disposal. I think he doesn't go for the riskier kick, and I think that might be because he sometimes can't execute the risky kick. What he's there for is, being a sort of shutdown player. And what he's good when he's played his best footy is when he shuts down a medium to small player. That's what he's good at doing. But in some games, that matchup might not be there. So you might be right. We might have a game when we're coming up against a team who, loads in some big forwards under the roof. And, we have to play, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, we have to play Melbourne and they have Brown, McDonald, Grundy, Gawn all in the team. And you go, all right, we actually probably need that bigger body. Then this might be a really good opportunity for Kane. And, it's just good knowing we've got that, because he was one of those guys that a couple of weeks ago, I was probably sitting there going, what's his season going to be? Like, we spoke about it on our pod a couple of weeks ago with Ryan and Mert. And we were like, you almost kind of forgot about Kane. Like, so much has gone on around him, and you're like, oh, where does he actually fit into this? Now we know. He could be one of our defenders this year. Will he start every week? Probably not. But is he a good option to come in if someone goes down or the right game? Off a very small sample size, he might be.
It might be smart strategy just from the club in general, because I just don't necessarily think we have too many people that could fill Zerk Thatcher's role in the VFL either.
Yeah.
I know Lewis Hayes is new, but he's almost seeming as if he's more of a centre half back, and they'll probably prime him for a role there.
Yeah. And we need to get Zach Reid on the park to begin with. So
Correct. Exactly. So look, all in all, probably don't want to stay on him too much longer, but I was really, really happy for Kane, and I do wish him all the very best. He's got my vote, and I just hope for sort of everything that he's gone through that he can make something of his career.
Yeah, well said, well said. I think the next one that's definitely worth a shout and looks a bolter for round one. If not, he's already there. I thought John Menzies was in that first half where the ball wasn't going our way. He was probably our best on in that first half, I would say. What do you think of Jai's game?
You know me, I'm Jai time, baby. He's my man. He's my man. I was big on Jai since the beginning of last year. He's just a genuine goal sneak. You know, he's one thing that comes really naturally to him is the one thing that you need from a small forward, and that's the ability to read the ball off the pack. And it just seems as if more often than not he's in the right position, and albeit most of his kicks look terrible off the boot. He's almost just got like a magnet that attracts the ball towards the goals. And it was similar to last year. He had a number of goals in the VFL that I saw that just went like they were propellers, helicopters, and they just somehow find their way into goals. So
yeah,
really, really impressed with him. And he's super young as well. So that's also a bonus. And we got him in the mid-season rookie draft. So I'm big on the Jai.
Another one of Dodoro's mid-season masterstrokes. There we go. How old is he? He's 20 years old. Wow. Yeah. Absolute world at his feet. Yeah, I thought he was terrific. Like you said, just a perfect small forwards game. Just tackled, pressured, found the right place at the right time, and then, he kind of opened the door up to the rest of the small brigade, because I think he probably spent a fair bit of time off the ground towards the back half of the game. But I mean, we'll jump into the next guy. It was amazing and so good to see Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti kicking footy. He's, brings a smile to every Essendon player's face, every Essendon fan's face, even the neutral fan. And how bloody good was that? Like pure Rove, like
good.
Talking pure, like just so clean, snap goal. You're like, missed that last year. Absolutely missed that last year. So, yeah, I'm stoked to see him back.
Yeah, it was good. He looked pretty far off the pace still, I will say. And I don't necessarily... It's so hard because he was so far off even getting close to touching the footy for the majority of that game, but just did one or two things right that were mercurial, where you just went far out. Like what an influence that has on everyone. That rundown tackle that he had in the corridor, typical sort of Tipper fashion. I'm not sure at this point in time whether he starts round one. I'd love to say that he does, but if they are only going with the one small option, providing Stringer's healthy and fit,
it sounds like he's not. It sounds like hamstring strain. 4 weeks out from round one. So let's assume he's not, for the sake of the conversation. Let's assume he's not.
Yeah. Well, if he's not, then it's tough, because I thought Tex had an awesome second half. Like, Tex looked so bloody good. I honestly think that, him and Davey looked better than Tipper. They got the ball more. They looked flashier. I mean, I was so taken aback by all of our small forwards today. Like, what a privilege we're in. At the beginning of the season, we really were, at the beginning of the draft, we were thinking, what are we going to do? We're really struggling. This is an area of weakness. And looking at the performance of Tex, Davey, Tipper and Menzies, I mean, all four of them could easily start in my team.
And the guy didn't play, who was our best small last year, Matt Guelphy, is another one you can throw in there.
Yeah, and I think Snell had a pretty good game as well. Like, Snell looked good. He looked composed. I think probably the weather providing was a little bit more suitable for smalls on that day. But in saying that, we're going to have days that are wet and worse in Melbourne. And I mean, if it was up to me, the way that they had the forward line is how I would run it for round one, where I actually wouldn't mind the idea of having like Jones, Wiedemann, Wright, and then having two crumbing forwards at their feet, and then maybe a Perkins in there. So
Yeah.
having a Menzie and a Tipper in there, or alternatively, a Menzie and a Davey, or a Menzie and a Tex.
Yeah, and then you can have the hybrid off the bench half forward, like I said, a Snelling or someone like that. Yeah, Tip is fitness wise, Tip Moody's obviously got a long way to come, and I think he just needs to play games. Like there's obviously all the fitness you can do with running and training and gym and all that stuff, but there is that fitness you get from actually just going out there every single week, playing four quarters of footy, running your guts out, putting in that little bit of extra effort that you wouldn't do on the training track. And that just helps you get there. So because of that, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts in the VFL. We will learn more next week when we play St Kilda in a bit more of an official practice match. Where their head's at. But for me right now, I think Menzie's got the number one spot for small forwards, judging on where everyone is at. If Guelphy is fit, I think he might make his way back in. And then, there's a potential that you could have a Jaden Alwyn, or Wanganeen as someone potentially coming off a bench. But it's funny because then you do have to think about the mix of the other sort of guys who are midfielders to smalls, because I think the advantage of a game like this where you've got 5 25-minute periods is that you're not having to push, Caldwell into the forward line for the sake of having him in the team, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's easier to balance when you've got 30 guys that you can just keep rolling through, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Menzie's a lock for round one as it is right now, and he's deserved it on that performance. He looks great. Who gets the second or third spot? It's up for debate. But hey, bring on the mosquito fleet. It's felt like it's been a little bit since we've had a good one that's been buzzing around, and we could be on the verge of a new one, which is exciting.
Look, again, just to sort of harp on Tex. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone's aware of this, but he's come off a pretty interrupted preseason. I'm pretty sure he may have even had surgery in the off season, and he's only, as of sort of last week, just moved himself back into full training, or the week before that. And he's another one of those players where it was so hard to get a read this year as to where he's going to see himself, what his future looks like. But I think there was a massive statement again. I mean, it must just be this time of the year for him, because he did the same thing last year in our practice game against the Dogs. But there was just a couple of things there that he did that not a lot of other players can do, like his pickup in the corridor with the ball right at his feet, and then running on, and then he ran into the open goal and missed. And
yes.
then which is obviously not ideal, but
not many players can miss a goal like that. I'll tell you what.
Yeah,
takes skill to do that.
No, I was super impressed with him. I mean, Davey looks amazing. Little Junior Frog looks awesome. He's just got all the attributes, right? And as you said, bring on the fleet. I'm very keen to see what that looks like. I think in the VFL they might have a bit of a party this year, so that'll be fun to watch as well.
Yeah. Well said. Who can we? Let's talk about Vossi, because he bustled his way into the latter parts of the game. And he's a brute. Like, I only watched limited time of him in the VFL last year and didn't really get a good look at him, but that was a nice exercise to watch him really throw his weight around, and takes an awesome, courageous mark going back with the flight, gets a goal, or maybe two, if I'm correct. And yeah, I don't think he's going to be playing round one, but, promising signs from a big brute of a kid.
Yeah, he was very surprising to me. I mean, from looking at him last year, there were certainly aspects of his game that were intriguing, but I didn't really ever think that he probably had the capacity to run around with AFL footballers. But there was that one passage where he roved the ball and he sidestepped someone and missed directly in front.
Yeah.
And I thought it was Nick Martin. I was like, is that Martin?
Yeah.
And then it was Voss. And he's a really interesting player because he plays tall, but he is more like a medium-sized player, like a Martin. Like he's got really good agility, but he's an absolute weapon. Like he
he's
is
massive.
so strong, and that courage that he had running back with the flight. I mean, I don't know if you've been following Blitz or anything like that, but a few people in Blitz have been saying that there are echoes of Jonathan Brown about Vossi, which is hilarious.
I mean, after that mark, I can kind of see. I see what they're talking about.
I agree. Like he's just strong. He gets in people's way. You know, at the very end, there was that ball that hit the ground. And he just pushed that Gold Coast defender away, and then he had sort of that dribbling shot that hit the post. But you know, as a third tall, if things happen and he's kicking goals, and you know we've got Wiedemann or Jones not doing the job, he's definitely serviceable because he can destroy people and play as a small tackling as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. Probably not round one, but it seems like we've got good depth. That was probably something else that I took out of the game today, was that we had much better depth than Gold Coast, which is surprising. It looked like our reserves team was a lot stronger than theirs, which is encouraging.
Yeah, it is, because they've always been a side who, you know, just chockers with, you know, top 10 picks, and they probably still are if you go through and look at it. But yeah, that was the sort of case, is that when some of their big, because they really front loaded the game and had their best players at the start. But then, you know, when Witts went off and Matty Rowell went off, you know, those guys, like they really fell apart. And also for us,
Rowell went off. He was absolutely eating us alive.
That guy's so big, like
so hard to tackle.
Like every time I see him on television, I'm like, the guy. He reminds me of Buzz Lightyear. That's what he looks like to me. He's Buzz Lightyear. It's crazy.
He's everything that Begley was wanting to be.
Yeah, the fridge. I miss the fridge. Good old Beggs. That definitely changed it when they brought those guys off, and also when we brought Sam Draper on, because Draper absolutely smashed whoever that young ruckman was. Like he was,
and he did well against Witts as well. He did really well against Witts.
And Witts is a hard ruckman to beat. He's, you know, I would say he's probably been the second best ruckman for a couple of years since Grundy's kind of fallen away, and obviously Gorn's still been the top dog. Anyone else you want to discuss before I read out some questions from the faithful?
Yes. I think Sammy does deserve a bit of a mention. And I've got one other player before we move on. So Sammy looks like he's taken his game definitely to another level already. I mean, that was sort of what we were all expecting, but he is now looking as if this year, as if he's really going to expose other ruckmen at ground level.
Yeah.
His agility, like he was just sidestepping. Not only ruckman, like that guy looked like a freight train running around next to him, but he did the same thing to Witts and just other midfielders that he was dancing around. So if he can continue developing that side of his game, I think that he will most likely beat a lot of ruckmen if he's sort of losing the taps. He's got the benefit of beating them around the ground. So that was something that I found to my liking. And one thing I found to be really interesting was Heps. I didn't really see him play much. I felt like he played maybe like 15, 20 minutes, and then he didn't seem to feature for the rest of the game. Did you notice that?
I noticed him at the start. There was a chain that he was in where he did like a really, really good hand pass where like he got a hand in a really dicey position, then quickly gave it out to maybe Parrish or someone, and then we transitioned down the line. But then, like I noticed him bob up a couple of times, but did not feature a great deal in the second half of the game. Honestly, like, it was pretty hard at times working out who was who, like with this general quality, the feed that was going on. But didn't think he had an amazing impact. I imagine if we saw what his full minutes were, I reckon they'd be pretty low.
Yeah. What about Shield? I was pretty disappointed with Shield's efforts.
Yeah, he missed. He had that sort of chance on goal that he probably, he should have done a lot better.
Pretty Shield-like though.
Yeah, it was a bit Shield-like, which is unfortunate that that's sort of what he's become. But didn't see a great deal of him. Didn't feel like he was like super bad, but super impactful. But I don't know. I guess it's hard to keep an eye on anyone. I mean, I was also like eating dinner at the same time, and trying to do a
What
few other things.
What about your thoughts on Setterfield and Wiedemann? I think it's probably worth us having a chat about those two.
For a split second, I forgot that Will Setterfield was wearing number 12, and I was like, "Fucking Tom Cutler's still playing." Oh wait, that's not. Oh, sorry, that's not who it is. I thought he actually had some pretty good moments. Setterfield, better than what I thought. Wiedemann, great start to the game, then missed a goal that he probably should have done a bit better at, kicking it out in the full. And then, just kind of faded away. Like he wasn't on the ground when we kind of had a lot of the control. I felt like he was sort of playing early on when they were playing a bit better. But you know, we said it earlier, but I like the look of the 3-prong tall forward. I like
Wow,
that. I like that look.
You say?
Yeah, I like the look.
You're normally you're never an advocate of the 3-man forward line. You've always put it down. Have we converted you?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it might be time to try something different and stop kicking it on, Chip's head. So
yeah.
Maybe that's why. Let's hear some questions from the faithful. We'll try to get through these at a pretty reasonable pace. This guy said, "Hey, is the game on KO?" Yes, it is. Let's keep moving. Tom Rick said, "Will we need a funeral ep during the home and away?" That's really the only question. I'd say, well, we always need a funeral. So unless we win the flag, there's a funeral, I think is just the way to look at it. Rom says, this is a good one for you, Jess. Do you reckon McGrath will ever fulfill his potential?
Yes, I do. I definitely do. He's still really young. He's only 23 I think he's just only 23. And he looked pretty good today. There was definitely passages where he looked really comfortable. I mean, he is suited to playing in the back line and...
24, there you go. So pretty close.
24, yeah. I do. I really do think he will fulfill... what is his potential, right? There's no... Everyone's idea of what his potential is their own opinion. But I do think that he will become a really solid defender for us, and he will eventually get better confidence with his decision-making by foot. It just comes with a bit of confidence, the team performing well. It's not like the team has really ever put anyone in our back line in a position to not feel pressured when they've got the ball in hand. So once we do become a stronger team, I think you'll come to find that he will sort of evolve into that role a little bit more.
Yeah, no, fair point. Andrew said, I'd like to know your thoughts on Patrick Voss and Will Setterfield game. We spoke about Vossy a bit. I'll be honest, never really saw a great deal of Setterfield at Carlton. Like, I know he was always in and out of the side and always injured. I know there were times they had big raps on him, but then it just didn't happen. Whatever needed to happen. I think he'll be handy. Is the main thing.
I think he actually, one thing that impressed me about him was really the two things that we're lacking, and we've lacked for years, was a midfielder pushing forward, taking a mark in the forward 50. I don't think he converted. He may have converted. I can't remember whether he kicked that goal, but he also delivered the ball inside forward 50 better than any of our midfielders kicking into the wind. In that sort of fourth period, he got the ball hand passed to him in the corridor, and he found Wanganeen just before Wanganeen kicked it to end the quarter. And there was so many times that Caldwell had the ball, Parrish had the ball in the exact same position, and they just kicked it straight down Gold Coast's throat. So to see a midfielder actually kicking the ball inside 50, aside from Merrett, and then also taking a mark, an attacking mark inside forward 50. It's good to see. It's definitely good to see. It's what we picked him up for. So onward and upwards.
Well said. Perry Slavin said, "We all love the package, but at what point will his inability to get fit end up just being a story about what could have been?" I think we're getting dangerously close there. We've obviously seen what can be in small stretches, but I feel like we are dangerously close to him being a what could have been player. At least for Essendon.
Where are you sitting emotionally with all of this at the moment?
Emotionally, I'm worried. That he's never going to play a string of games again. That's my concern. I know what he can do, but
he played 15 out of 22 games last year, so it's still quite a lot of games.
Yeah, You just need him ready for September. That's it. Just flying for September. That's what we need. That's what we need. Xavier DeCourt says, I have a question. What has more strength, a piece of biltong beef jerky or Jake Stringer's hamstring? Probably the jerky at this point.
Yeah.
More questions about KO. Blake Welsh says, Sash Layers would love a discussion on who we're gonna go with our key backs this season. Cheers, go Plains. I guess we kind of touched on that a little bit with the Kane Baldwin discussion, but I think you're looking at Zerk, Laverty, Ridley, Kelly as the starting lineup right now, and it's until someone can, bump them off that seat or they go poorly, whether that is Kane Baldwin, whether that's a Zach Reid at some point, even a Rhett Montgomery who was playing there for a little bit today.
Ox.
Yeah, him as well. So I guess it just depends if one of those guys gets hurt or one of the names I've mentioned there plays some really good footy in the twos.
What about your halfback flankers? So obviously Andy McGrath's a lock, but the question marks at the moment surround Hind or D'Ambrosio. I noticed Hind a lot today for good and bad reasons. There was that one absolute shocking kick into the middle that he turned over, which you could see on his face he was pretty disappointed by. Didn't notice Mass a great deal, if I'm being honest, but again, like minutes and whatever. I think Hind still gets the place over Mass right now, but I don't think it's a safe position for Hindy. Like, he still needs to work pretty hard, play some pretty good footy to keep that position. Obviously, Redmond's the other one who's in that rebounding sort of role. But, of the three, if anyone's going to lose their spot first, I think Hindy's the one who is closest to being overtaken by Mass. Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that we're already aware of is that Hind's not great defensively, and today the only times you really saw Hind was when he was up outside our defensive 50, whereas a lot of the time that Mass was getting the ball, he was deep inside our forward 50, like getting in and under, getting the ball out and delivering it outside our defensive 50. So I don't know. For me, based on that game, I would say my tokens are probably more favoured to Mass.
Okay.
But it is very sort of 50-50. And to be fair, before I'd started watching that game, I was probably leaning more toward Hindy. So I'll be a kind of a watch for next week, I think, on that one.
That's fair. And Ethan Goading wants to know, what will be the pass mark for Sam Wiedemann and Will Setterfield this year? I think
15 games plus, I'd say, for both of them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they would want. I mean, Wiedemann, obviously, you want to have a certain amount of goals attached to that as well.
25 plus probably would be serviceable, I'd say.
Yeah, 20 at a minimum. Like if it's less than 20, then it's it's not a good year.
Yeah.
So, and then Setterfield, don't know. Maybe he makes a spot his own. I'm not sure what that spot is, but a winger or something else, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think for Setterfield, if it was up to him, he'd say a starting position in the midfield would be a pass mark for him. So
yeah,
we'll just have to wait and see on that as well.
Yeah. Last one, Elliot Rosen says, question for the pod. In your view, was Merrett appointed captain because he really wants to do it, or was Merrett appointed captain because there isn't another player that's captain material yet? Interesting one. Like, we obviously we lack players between, that 26 to 30 bracket. Like, there really isn't anyone, due to being banned from the draft at various points and just the way that our list is sort of shaped up and everything else. So, like, I think he wanted it, but again, I also don't think there was really anyone else who was going to get it. You know what I mean? Like, I did sort of wonder to myself, I'm like, could you have seen like maybe a Dylan Shiel as a vice captain potentially, as something a bit out of left field, but I couldn't see there being anyone else apart from Zach being the skipper. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, same here. I mean, I probably don't necessarily agree with the notion that he just got it because we had no one else. He's an absolute champion of the football club, and he's been, a part of the leadership group for, pretty much since he was 20 years old. And I think he actually did captain a game in 2016 in that horrific year that we obviously don't like speaking of all that often. But, when you're a 3-time best and fairest, 2-time All-Australian, and as a club, we've lacked someone that is a little bit more stern, and we've lacked someone who actually drives standards on-field standards, that is.
Yeah.
It was, to me, a no-brainer, really. And I don't think that there's probably many better people at any football club than him, really, I would say, based on his credentials to act as an on-field leader and a captain of a football club.
I like it. That's all from the questions. And I reckon that's probably going to just about do us for an evening. Jesse, so thank you for jumping on for the first time for 2023. We'll no doubt catch up in the studio soon. Any final thoughts before we run off into a balmy February evening?
Final thoughts. We're going to be having a way grimmer conversation next week, and it's going to be funeral. It's going to be the funeral pod will be at the end of the St Kilda post wrap. I'm just joking. Wiedemann's going to kick 10 and Jai's going to kick 8 next week.
Yeah, sick. Love that. Thank you, Sash listeners, for your support as always. If you want to sign up to be a premium member, visit the links on the show to our website where you can sign up to be a premium member. You get bonus content throughout the season and also an ad-free experience if that tickles your fancy. We've also got some new merch that's going to be coming out pretty soon. So if you love planes, there's some planes-related stuff that's coming. So it's in the pipeline. It's getting all sorted out. It might be here just after round 1, but it's going to be here pretty soon. So if you love your planes, keep an eye out, save those pennies. It's got some fantastic stuff coming your way and help support the show, helps us do all the video stuff that we're ramping up again this season, amongst other things. So appreciate your support as always. And that's all from me. Up the Planes.
Go the Planes.